The haunting sound of a woman's scream pierced the stillness of the Arizona twilight, stopping Quinn Parker dead in his tracks. His hand instinctively moved to the revolver at his hip as he scanned the dense ponderosa pines that bordered the eastern edge of Naco. The year was 1873, and in these parts, strange noises in the wilderness rarely brought good tidings. Quinn tilted his worn Stetson back on his head, listening intently. The scream came again, desperate and pained, definitely human, and unmistakably female. This was no mountain lion or coyote playing tricks on a tired cowboy's ears. Someone was in trouble. "Hello," he called out, his voice carrying through the forest. "Anyone there?" Only the wind answered, rustling through the pine needles overhead. Quinn hesitated. The smart move would be to ride back to town and gather a search party. Bandits were common in these borderlands, and a man alone could easily find himself outnumbered. But something in that cry spoke of immediate danger, a desperation that wouldn't wait for help to be organized. Quinn dismounted from his chestnut mare, Penny, and tied her securely to a low-hanging branch. "Stay put, girl," he murmured, patting her neck. "I won't be long." He moved cautiously through the trees, following what appeared to be a faint trail. The last golden rays of sunlight filtered through the canopy, casting long shadows across the forest floor. Quinn had spent nearly a decade roaming these territories after the war, working cattle drives from Texas to Montana, but he'd never felt settled anywhere. At 32, he was still a drifter, taking odd jobs and moving on whenever the walls of civilization seemed to close in too tight. Another cry, weaker this time, guided him forward. Quinn quickened his pace, pushing through a dense thicket until he stumbled into a small clearing. There, propped against the base of a massive pine, was a young woman. Her dress was torn and soiled, her face contorted in pain. One look told Quinn everything he needed to know, her swollen belly and the way she clutched at it, the sheen of sweat on her brow, despite the cool evening air. "Madam?" Quinn approached slowly, hands raised to show he meant no harm. "Madam, are you all right?" The woman's eyes flew open startling blue against her pale face, and for a moment she seemed more frightened of Quinn than whatever pain gripped her. "Stay back," she gasped, trying unsuccessfully to push herself farther against the tree. "I ain't gonna hurt you," Quinn said, keeping his voice low and even. "Looks like you're in a bad way. I can ride back to town, fetch a doctor." "No time," she panted, grimacing as another contraction seized her. "Baby's coming. Now." Quinn felt a cold sweat break out across his forehead. He'd helped birth countless calves on ranches across the territory. But a human baby? That was women's business, not something a lone cowboy should be meddling with. "What's your name, madam?" he asked, buying time while his mind raced. "Willow," she managed between labored breaths. "Willow O'Connor." "I'm Quinn Parker. Listen, Miss O'Connor, I don't know the first thing about delivering babies." "Neither do I," she said with a weak attempt at a smile that quickly transformed into a grimace. "First one." Her face contorted again, and she let out another cry, this one muffled as she bit down on her lip hard enough to draw blood. Quinn made his decision. "All right, Miss O'Connor, I'll help however I can." He shrugged out of his duster and laid it on the ground beside her. "Let's get you more comfortable at least." As he helped her onto the makeshift bedding, Quinn noticed the bruises on her wrists, the scratch marks on her face. Whatever had brought this woman to the woods alone and in labor, it wasn't anything good. "How far along are you?" he asked, kneeling beside her. 9 months, she gasped. "Maybe more. I lost track of the days." Quinn nodded, rolling up his sleeves. "I've delivered plenty of calves. Can't be that different, right?" Willow let out a sound that might have been a laugh if it hadn't been cut short by another contraction. "God, I hope not." The next hour passed in a blur for Quinn. He used his canteen to wet his bandana, wiping Willow's brow as she labored. She was a fighter, he could tell that much. Despite her obvious exhaustion and fear, there was a determination in her eyes that commanded respect. "Push, Miss O'Connor," he urged when the time came. "I can see the head." Willow bore down with a strength that surprised him, gripping his hand so tightly he thought his fingers might break. And then, just as the first stars began appearing in the darkening sky above the clearing, a new sound joined the chorus of the forest, the indignant wail of a newborn. "It's a boy," Quinn announced. his voice thick with unexpected emotion as he held the squirming, bloody infant. "You've got yourself a son, Miss O'Connor." With shaking hands, Quinn used his knife to cut the cord, then wrapped the baby in his spare shirt. The child was small but had healthy lungs, his cries filling the clearing as Quinn carefully placed him in Willow's outstretched arms. "Hello," she whispered, tears streaming down her dirt-smudged face. "Hello, little one." She looked up at Quinn, her eyes filled with a gratitude that made his chest tighten uncomfortably. "Thank you, Mr. Parker. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come along." Quinn shrugged, suddenly embarrassed. "Just happened to be in the right place." He glanced around the clearing, aware that night was falling fast. "We need to get you both to town. There's a doctor in Naco who can look after you proper." Willow's face hardened. "No, I can't go to town." "Madam, you just had a baby in the woods. You need—" "I can't," she repeated, her voice firmer despite her exhaustion. "He'll find me there." Quinn didn't need to ask who he was. The fear in her eyes told him enough. "All right," he said after a moment. "My campsite's not far. We can rest there tonight, figure things out in the morning." It took some doing to get Willow and the newborn onto Penny. Quinn fashioned a sling for the baby from his bandana and helped Willow into the saddle before leading the mare slowly back through the trees, one hand on the reins, the other ready to catch Willow should she start to fall. His camp was simple, just a small fire pit beneath an overhang of rock that provided shelter from the elements. Quinn quickly rebuilt the fire, then set about making a more comfortable place for Willow and the baby to rest. "You should try to sleep," he told her as he heated coffee over the flames. "You've been through an ordeal." Willow nodded, her eyes already closing as she curled around her son. "What will you do?" she murmured. Quinn settled himself on the opposite side of the fire, his Winchester across his lap. "I'll keep watch. Don't you worry about a thing, Miss O'Connor. You and your boy are safe now." As he watched the firelight play across her exhausted face, Quinn felt something shift inside him, something he couldn't quite name. For years he drifted across the West, never putting down roots, never letting himself get attached to any place or person. But in the span of a few hours, his world had suddenly become centered on this woman and her newborn son. Morning came with the soft cooing of the baby, a sound that pulled Quinn from his light doze. He blinked against the early sunlight to find Willow awake, nursing her son beneath the blanket he'd given her. "Sorry," she said, noticing his gaze. "He was hungry." "No need to apologize," Quinn replied, standing to stoke the fire. "That's what babies do, I reckon." He busied himself with breakfast coffee and the last of his jerky, wishing he had something more substantial to offer a new mother. As he worked, he couldn't help stealing glances at Willow. In the daylight, he could see her more clearly. Despite the ordeal she'd been through, there was a delicate beauty to her features, high cheekbones, a small, straight nose, and those striking blue eyes. Her dark hair fell in tangled waves past her shoulders, and Quinn guessed she was in her mid-20s, though hardship had a way of aging a person beyond their years. "I haven't thanked you properly," Willow said, as he handed her a tin cup of coffee. "What you did last night, I don't know many men who would have helped a stranger like that." Quinn shrugged. "Couldn't just leave you there." "Many would have." She adjusted the baby in her arms. "I've been thinking about what to name him. What do you think of James?" The question caught Quinn off guard. "James is a fine name, strong." "James Parker O'Connor," she said softly, testing the sound of it. "Parker?" Quinn repeated, startled. Willow's cheeks colored slightly. "If you don't mind, he should carry the name of the man who helped bring him into this world." Something warm spread through Quinn's chest. "I'm honored, Miss O'Connor." "Willow, please." "Willow?" he repeated, liking the way it felt on his tongue. "Now, I don't mean to pry, but I'm thinking we ought to discuss what happens next. You said you can't go to town?" Her expression clouded. "No, my husband, former husband, he'll be looking for me there." Quinn nodded, waiting for her to continue. "I was married to Edward O'Connor for 3 years," Willow said, her voice tight. "He owns the